When I was in my mid-20s, I met a girl. She was beautiful, dynamic, fun, and got all the same jokes that I did. We both liked horror films, but I enjoyed the ones that she had never seen, and she the ones that I had never seen. We were a perfect match. Shortly after meeting her and spending some time together, I finally got the chance to meet her two little girls, both of whom were vibrant with life, always happy and completely carefree. I fell in love all over again, and I knew that I had found the person that I wanted to spend my life with. Her two daughters were currently staying with their grandmother while my wife-to-be and I found a suitable place to live. During that time, living together with just the two of us, my brother offered me something truly special. He was 10 weeks old, absolutely picture perfect, and had a personality all his own. I named this black lab puppy Damian. Damian and I grew very close, almost immediately. That dog would follow me around like a duckling from the first hour that he had been given to me. My wife and I fell in love with our first, what would basically be, our child. A few months later, we had procured a home just big enough for our family, and within a month, those two little girls came to live with us as well. Both they and Damian felt an instant connection to each other, and before long, he was just one of their playmates, a big brother as it were. We all went everywhere together, camping, fishing, hiking, road trips. We were a happy and fully loving family, and soon, our final addition would arrive. A couple of years after moving in all together, and becoming the dynamic that we were, my wife gave birth to a tiny baby girl. She was welcomed into a home with more love than can be described in words. Her sisters adored her, my wife and I beside ourselves with awe and wonder at this beautiful baby with the best temperament one could ask for, and Damian, so carefully and gently, couldn't help from peeking into the bassinet to check on the wonder that my wife and I had created. The following years left a swath of memories I can no further forget or ignore than my empirical need to breathe. Heaven could be the only word to describe it. Through all the ups and downs, the incredible highs and devastating lows, I always had my family close by my side, but especially my dog. But as years progressed, into over a decade, children grew up. Some moved away. My career had taken a stronghold on my free time, and our best friend, our first child, the children's brother and playmate, had grown old. Damian was 14 and had trouble walking, trouble breathing, trouble seeing, and more ailments too painful to recount here. But despite it all, he remained happy and loyal to his family right to the very end. If my wife would stumble, Damian would struggle to make it to her side and offer what little assistance he could. Damian died on a late Tuesday afternoon. I had never felt such a loss. My best friend, my source of unconditional love, my children's playmate, and my wife's protector was gone. He brought us all together as a family. He helped make every one of us who we are today. The afternoon that I found him, I wrapped my friend in my favorite blanket that I had had since a child, and with my wife's help, loaded him with care into the car for one last trip to camp. Damian was buried beneath a tree in his favorite spot, and somehow, this gave me comfort. This gave me at least some peace, but I still missed him every single day. The wheel of time spins uncaringly. Children grow old, and parents do too. But I never forgot my friend who made it all possible. Eventually, with children now all gone from the house, my wife and I decided to downsize. Our home had become just too big for the two of us, and we'd always dreamed of moving further into the countryside. So, after a few months of having the place on the market, the home that we had lived in for so long was finally purchased by a young couple looking for a good deal on a place to live. In a way, I was happy to see them take the place. A lot of love had existed within those walls, and I felt truly happy that they may continue such tradition. Keys left to the new owners, vehicles and moving trucks loaded, my wife and I set off on yet another adventure, further into the countryside, where a quaint little country home awaited us. We had unpacked and moved in relatively quickly. Within a week, there was scarcely a cardboard box to be found. All knickknacks and belongings having themselves found a new place to reside as well. For weeks, everything was going well, and my wife had truly begun settling into our now more relaxed lifestyle. But that's when the phone calls started coming in. When I picked up the phone, I recognized the number as coming from our old residence. It was the new owners of our old home. I, of course, greeted them courteously, told them I hoped they were enjoying their new place, and the husband, who was on the other line, seemed content enough with it. But then he asked me if I had left any animals behind. I knew that I hadn't. I mentally recounted the 3 cats and 1 small dog that we had living currently in our house, and I knew that we had brought them all with us. So I of course told him yes, that I was sure that I didn't. When I asked him why, he said it was nothing, likely just a stray outside, left out in the dark by neglectful owners to bark. To which I knew now that he was talking about a dog, and once more reassured him that I had mine with me. The man acknowledged, seemed as though he accepted this explanation, proceeded to tell me that he loved everything about the house, thanked me again, and then got off the phone. I went to bed that night with curious perplexity, confused as to why such an event prompted him to call me, though I was sure it was nothing. I couldn't help but think over and over again, the neighbors don't have a dog. A few more days passed without incident. Things had gotten well into a new norm that both my wife and I were fully enjoying. But again, I got another phone call. This time, the owner of my old home insisted that I come investigate something. He swore up and down that he and his family had been kept awake at night by persistent and woeful barking. At first, he thought it was coming from outside, and yelled to the animal to shut up and be quiet. But whatever it was, barked anyway, relentlessly. He said it honestly sounded as if it was coming from inside the walls, but he had inquired to the neighbor about their dog anyway, asking if they could bring it inside at night, explaining the situation. But he told him that they didn't own a dog, and had never owned one. Now the owner began to think that maybe there was a stray on the loose, and despite the nightly disturbances, coming from the walls themselves, he left food and water outside, convinced of some other explanation. But as the nights progressed, the barking and whining continued, and the food and water outside remained untouched. He told me over the phone that he was at the end of his rope and that no one could explain it, and that maybe, by me being there, that I could. This seemed like such an odd request, but also benign enough. My wife and I loaded our car for a day trip and began our journey back to our old family home. As soon as I walked into that house, I noticed it. We had scrubbed everything, disinfected every surface before we left. The new owners had no pets, and yet The house smelled like a dog. And not just any dog. It smelled like our dog. Like Damian. This, of course, made my wife instantly well up in tears, and after being inside for a while, she too had to go outside to catch her composure. The new homeowners went with her, doing their best to console my almost hysterical wife, who had progressed to such a state in mere seconds, something I did not expect. Then, I heard it. I made my way over to the hall and down the stairs to the bedroom, the place where I detected the source of that noise. When I turned the corner, I couldn't believe what I saw. Standing there, as if he hadn't aged a day past his prime, wagging his tail and looking at me with those ever soulful eyes, was my dog. Damian was somehow standing before me, happy to see his master like any loyal dog would. I immediately burst into tears like a 5-year-old. I crept down and held him. I hugged my dog like it was the first time all over again. Damian loved hugs and just let me do so. I'd missed him so very much. I stood up to walk away, called for my wife, when Damian turned and went for the closet. He didn't move the curtain aside or stop at the obstruction. My dog just passed right through it. I opened the curtain to see him, not wanting him to disappear so quickly, but there was no sign of him. Only a lingering smell that indicated that I wasn't crazy, and that he had been there. After talking things over with my wife, it didn't take much convincing. The challenging part was getting the new family to move out of the old home. But with some monetary incentive and non-stop whining and barking within their walls, they eventually agreed it would be in their best interest to find a new place, and left, leaving the place vacant once again. My wife and I moved back within a week. These past few weeks have been quiet, mostly. Sometimes I can hear deep snoring coming from somewhere in the house, but while we're both awake. Other times, there's a knock at the door, and I can still hear his bark, intimidating all who enter his home and are around his family. There's even been a few times that old boy has come out of wherever he resides now to lay at our feet and watch TV. I may not see him all the time. I may not hear him all the time. But I know he's there. And I know he's always with me. I love you, Damian. And I will always be grateful to have you by my side. Forever.